Alright, so today we're working on the 1971 Honda CB175, mostly focusing on the starter clutch. So here is, we've already got the left side of the crank torn apart here. Had about 9 screws, just Phillips head screws holding it in. A couple across the top, a couple along the bottom here. Took apart our AC generator. And this is what the issue looks like when your starter clutch is not working. Oh, I guess it's going to work right now. But then we have that happen. So we know there's an issue with the starter clutch. So once you get your crankcase torn apart here, got to get this bolt out here and take the rotor off before we can actually get to the clutch, which runs on this chain. So that's what we're doing right now. I'm trying to take this bolt out with just a ratchet. Proved to be pretty tricky. What I ended up using is a simple little electric impact. Just one that you can buy at any hardware store, and it gets the job done just like that. One little zap, out comes your center screw. We can set that aside for now. The one specialty tool of the job is this M16 by 1.5 millimeter, essentially just a bolt, little puller kind of screw. Just picked this one up from Amazon. Yeah, it's about $9. So anyway, this threads right into here, and after a little bit of wrenching, that'll come right off. So let's see what that looks like in a minute. Alrighty, so after a few taps with the electric impact on this little forcing screw, the entire rotor came right off. I have an oil pan down under the engine here. It looks like one of the rollers actually just fell right out. In case you're wondering, rollers are just this small. Real tiny, kind of hard to see. You've got the caps, which push against the rollers, and there are these tiny little springs inside here. Let's see. And those are your springs. Now, what seems to have happened on this model is that I've got a collapsed spring stuck inside right here where one of these rollers sits, leading to a no start condition every now and then. Looking here, I do also see it. These teeth here are chipped a little bit, starting to crack. I'm hoping that we can get this repaired without breaking any of these. I've seen one of these broken before. I'm trying to avoid that, but let's get inside. Gonna probably end up having to use an impact driver to break these screws loose. That's how we got all these screws out of here, was just a basic impact driver and a hammer. So let's try and get this apart, see what's broken, and get it fixed. Alrighty, so now we are inside taking a look at the rotor. We just pulled off the CB175. It's the front, you still remember from the engine. This is what the back looks like. So you've got these little slots in here where the rollers sit, and there's the cap and the spring, which are down inside there, which is now why we have to take this apart to get the collapsed springs and one remaining cap out. For this, I'm just going to be using a simple impact driver. It's worked really well so far in this project, so let's see if we can make something happen here. Guess it helps to have the hammer ready. Alright, so with a little bit of pounding and help with using my shoes to actually hold the rotor still, I was able to get these 3 screws to finally come loose. As I was saying right there, you can see that these have actually been punched so that they lock into these slots right here. I've actually got a little piece of debris from the screw itself right there. But yeah, so let's get these 3 screws out. Just using a small flathead, even though I shouldn't, but whatever. We already got the screws loose. So let's see what we're dealing with. Alright. Voila, there is our essential starter clutch assembly. There is one spring which is sticking out. This one doesn't look too bad. It's kind of stuck in there. Yeah, so that one doesn't seem all that bad. It's a little loose right around here, but that was buried inside anyway. But now we've got one more cap. And it's stuck in. I'm not sure if you can actually see this. See if I can get a good angle here. There's that last remaining cap right there. There we go. So right there is our last remaining cap. Not really sure how we're going to get that out right now. Try fiddling around with it, see what happens when we come back. But hey, there we go. There's our starter clutch. Pretty simple. So, doing a little thinking with my brain here. If this little cap in here is metal, I've got a small magnetic pickup tool that I think will perfectly get that guy out of there. Let's see if this works. And sure enough, there is our collapsed spring. If I can get this to focus. There's our collapsed spring and cap. Yeah, that spring was toast. So we've got all the bad parts out now. Let's get some of the good parts and start putting it back together. Alright, so we've got our new parts over here. Just by looking at the difference in old spring versus new spring, you can clearly tell the new spring is much longer. Obviously not bent and destroyed, so let's get rid of that garbage and start assembling our starter clutch. We're just gonna pop one of these springs in. Actually, it's probably better to first put a cap on the spring. Go ahead and slide it into the hole. Lining this up can be a bit tricky. Oh, looks like we got that one pretty quick. Put one of the rollers in there just to hold it in place while we go ahead and move on to the next one. Again, just put the cap on the spring before you decide to slide it in. And this one's not going to go in as easy. Almost. There we go. Put in our next roller and just let that spring and cap hold it in place. Last spring and cap. Helps if I put them in the right way. Going up in here. Again, take our small little screwdriver. Get it all lined up. In goes the roller. And there's our new starter clutch, all ready to go. Just note before you go and try flipping this over to put it onto your rotor, you're going to want the actual gear off of the crank from the engine. So I brought that inside. Let's go ahead, and what we'll do is just slip it in here. This way I can flip it over and show you what it's going to look like. Now the only problem is actually getting it transferred to here. Well, I guess we'll see what happens. Let's just hold it in place with our fingers. Flip it over. Ta-da. Life's good. Whoa. Transfer this over to our rotor. Make sure we've got our locator hole. Line up with the locator tab.
Daddy, I want to tell you good night. What are you doing?
I'm working. And you are killing me.
He said tell you good night.
Yeah, hang on. Alright, so I actually went back, made sure that each screw went into the hole that it actually came out of, so these tabs would again line up and help lock the screw in place. So we're going to put on our starter gear here to make sure that these rollers don't fall out. Just a little twist helps it go in. Of course now it's not going to do it. There we go. So if you notice, I can spin it this way all I want and absolutely nothing's going to happen. But the instant we go the opposite way, we get a nice grip and our clutch is working again. Great. Let's go put everything back on the bike and see what happens. Alright, so we're back at the CB175. We've got our rotor and clutch assembly with the chain and gears back on the bike. Just use a rubber mallet to kind of gently hammer this back into place. Put in the bolts, put in the little locking tab for the starter gear right here, and then let's make sure that everything is working correctly now. So, oh, looks like it's working. Working a lot better than it was last time. Yep, so no problems there. Perfect. So that is the starter clutch tackled. The other thing we're going to be looking at while we're in here is the neutral switch. Sits right up in here. We'll get a close-up view of that in just a second. Alright, so after a small light adjustment, so our neutral switch would sit right up in here. This is our old stator, which is broken. Only sitting up in there kind of like that. And then you have one wire leads to right here, off of your alternator. There's a little wire right there, and we have this little rotor switch guy. Just has a little metal contact ring and a metal contact tab right on it. Little plastic notch right there holds it in place right on this tooth. Kind of hard to see, but essentially the problem comes down to this was broken. So doing a small little comparison of old versus new. Got a new one in here. This is our old switch down here. This has actually been bent a little bit, but the little contact bead at the bottom of it is what broke. It's kind of hard to see, but right down there is where it broke. So this is our new one. This contact bead right here is what had rusted and broke off. When I first pulled this apart, this was all covered in dirt and mud and gunk and all kinds of terribleness. So cleaned that up a bit thanks to some brake parts cleaner and an old toothbrush. Gonna go ahead and slap this guy together, see how everything goes. So just plunge right down here. This guy we can just sort of toss up for right now. Should clean this up a little bit more. Oh well. Awesome. That is essentially where everything's going to sit. Still got a new rotor right here that we can toss in with my still clean hand. So I'm going to go right in there, just like that. But let me go ahead and get the screws real quick and we'll come back in a second. Okay, so this is where having the right tool really helps, but we reset this wire back behind this guard in here. Keeps the wire out of the chain. Tighten this little screw back up, which holds that guard in place. And I actually had to reattach this wire, which goes to the neutral stator. It's actually easier to have it coming into the top instead of through the bottom, which would be impossible. But put the stator back in, tightening up the screw right now. Let's make sure this lines up good. Nice. And then the one long screw, which will go in the center right here with our new rotor, which will look something kind of like that. Just like that. Just so you guys can see. And that's all there is to that. Once you have this in here, now we're just reassembling. Just putting on this cover first. Actually going to have to first clean off this surface, make sure we get a good seal. Don't really feel like waiting for a new gasket to show up, so I'm just using some red RTV to hold everything back in place. There's no gasket over here, so there's no worries on that. And let's just slap it back together and get it running again.